Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mark Humphreys in Loughton, England. Hi, Jim. Big fan of you over the years and the show. I wanted to know your opinion of the Mr. Perfect gimmick, and why do you think Curt Hennig was never given a continued WWF main event run or even a world title win around 1990? Also, was Hennig training for a return to the ring in the WWF before he jumped to WCW in 1997?
Second question first. No, I don't think so, because he had the goddamn Lloyd's of London policy. But
now, wait,
gosh,
did he have it then? Or, because remember, he wrestled Bret Hart. His last match was SummerSlam 91, and he had a really bad back, legit.
And that match with Bret Hart, Bobby Eaton, I came over to his house one day in Charlotte. They had it on the VCR because he got it for his kids. And that he said, you got to watch this. Bobby was blown away by how good both guys were. It was a great match, but especially we liked Hennig's work. Go ahead.
At that point, Mr. Perfect is out of the ring. He manages Ric Flair because Bobby doesn't manage at ringside anymore. So Bobby's associated, but Mr. Perfect's with him all the time. Somewhat of a Bobby Davis kind of role.
Right.
And then he comes out of retirement on Primetime Wrestling because the main event at Survivor Series in 92 was going to be Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior versus Razor Ramon, who had just gotten there, was getting a big push, and Ric Flair. And that's when the Warrior and Davey Boy got in trouble for the growth hormone shipment. And they were both gone. And they replaced the Warrior. They did a whole angle on Primetime where Savage announces he wants Mr. Perfect to be his partner, and Perfect and Heenan laugh about it. And then eventually Savage kind of talks him into it, and Flair kind of talks him into it by being a heel. And then he returns to the ring. So was his Lloyd's of London policy for that year? Or was it after that?
No, because he had a bad back. But the Lloyd's of London policy only paid him off if he retired. So he had not said, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but he had not claimed on his policy yet because he didn't consider that he was retired at that point. He wasn't working because he really had a bad back. But I seem to remember that later on, because all the Minnesota guys, Animal had a Lloyd's of London policy on his bad back, but there was a clause in it that when he came back, he could wrestle tag matches, but not single matches. I'm not shitting you. This was a thing we couldn't book in like 97, I think it was. We couldn't book Animal in a single match or it would violate his Lloyd's policy. But when he came back after cashing in on it, when he came back to wrestling, if he was in a tag match, it was okay because of the wording. I think Ric Flair's the only guy that didn't cash in on a policy that he had at some point out of like a dozen guys that were paying those high premiums. But the point is, Curt, when he jumped, was he the guy that there was an issue with something that the office had done or said that screwed up his collecting on his Lloyd's of London policy? Or am I thinking about somebody else?
I'm not sure. Like you said, all those Minnesota guys did it.
But the point is, I believe that there was heat, and I know somebody's going to send more in on this, so tune in the show next week. But there was heat, I believe, if he's the right one I'm thinking of, where somewhere or another, because he was working, the office said or did something that kind of stooged him or made his policy go sideways, and that's where he said, fuck it, and he left and went south and went back to wrestling. More on that next week.
That's right. What are your thoughts overall about Curt Hennig?
Oh, I mean, that's why I get such a kick out of watching Dolph Ziggler work, because he has channeled that. But Curt the gimmick was perfect for him because he was such a great athlete and it was so effortless and he could do so many things and he was a natural in the ring and a second generation guy grown up around the business. All the boys loved him. What a fucking merry prankster he was. He was always ribbing people. He was one of the boys. He grew up around the business and he got it. Of the Minnesota crew, guys like Animal and Hawk and Darso and those guys, they didn't grow up around the business. So they were one of the boys, but Curt Hennig was a true, he and Heenan were fucking perfect together. He and Flair were perfect together because he was one of the boys. He got the whole wrestling business mentally and physically. He's the one when they were in the AWA, that Stan and Steve, Lane and Kern, the fabulous ones, when they'd gone up there to work for Vern, and they're all on a fucking plane going somewhere. And Stan has his, of course, they carried on their bags because they couldn't lose their shit. Stan Lane, and this was the Zubaz era, has both of his hands on his carry-on trying to stuff it into a fucking overhead compartment, and he's standing right in front of this guy on the aisle seat that's a businessman with his suit and tie and jacket on and a tie buttoned up, and Stan's got both hands shoving his fucking bag in, and Hennig gets up from behind him and jerked Stan's Zubaz down. Of course, he was wearing no underwear. And Stan's dick is just flapping in this guy's face. And the guy was like, no. Like he wasn't seeing a dick. He was seeing like a goddamn fucking AIDS-infected hypodermic needle or the leprosy or something. No. And he was always doing shit like that. Your shoes would be glued to the floor or the ceiling or, whatever the case. But he was a great talent. He was one of the best in-ring workers. He got to be a tremendous promo. And he didn't need a lot of takes on all that shit. He could fucking bat the gum first try or catch the fucking towel or whatever it may be. So I always got along with Curt. I thought he was great as a talent.
You think he could have been a world champion outside of the AWA?
Yes. A guy like Curt, who understood the business and who also had a background as being a really good babyface that could sell his ass off, but also being a really good heel that could cheat his ass off. In the days of the territories, a guy like that would have been considered for the NWA title. I don't know. At some point, Curt Hennig could have definitely been the WWE champion. I'm not sure. When he was Mr. Perfect, that brief few years, there's Hogan and Savage and whatever. And when he's in basically all of the 90s, there was some heavy hitters. I would have never put Curt at the top of a company to be the face of a company with that kind of field. He'd be a high up main event talent, but not the guy. But look at everybody that's held the WWE championship over the last 15 years and find the very few that were better at it than Curt Hennig. So if you had Curt from 1990 in the business over the last 15 years, he would have been a blowaway world champion.